Well, the very first like impression I got from days here
Mm.
in college was that I will never be enough was like the first thought that came into my mind because everything was a competition,
Mm.
and it was they set up the system so someone always has to win and someone always has to lose. I knew that I would never be one of the winners.
Mm.
So one example would be this was kind of like this is something that I would tell my friends is that in high school when I was studying abroad, um, the grading system wasn't relative. So everyone can get 100.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone can get A's, right?
Yep.
Even over 100. And that was like everyone could get a good score and things like that. But in Korea, someone had to get like an A plus and someone had to get a C.
Mm.
And so then one time I got a 96 or something for my overall grade in this one class, and this
Yeah.
girl got a 99. She got an A
Mm.
and I got a C
Wow.
because because someone had to get a C, right? And someone had to get an A in that. And because everyone did so well,
Mm.
like that was just kind of the result. And it had nothing to do with your abilities. It was just a number. And I realized that
Mm.
um I don't know, it was just not a system that you can really thrive in. When I was in high school, it was like um a lot of the grading system, we always started from zero. So
Mm.
if you do this assignment, it's like a plus 10. If you do this, it's a plus 10. So everyone can get 100. But in Korea, you start from 100
Right.
and people deduct the points, right? So you got this wrong. Okay, so that's a 96. Oh, you got this wrong. That's a 92. And it's a system where you go lower. You can never really go higher.
When you say that you feel like you're never enough
Mm.
in Korean education, never enough for whom? Like the university, for society, for yourself, for your parents? Like, where's that come from?
Um, for me, studying was just mainly for myself and for my enjoyment.
Mm.
But because this eventually, well, I don't know for our major, but for other majors, like the companies look at your grades and your ranking, right? So
Yep.
then that kind of leads to like the society's expectations and then like your parents. And so it's never really just about your personal I don't know, enjoyment, a
Mm.
growth.
Mm.
It's about like your whole life basically. So you're never enough for the society, you're never enough for your parents. um and I think the friend groups even are kind of divided by like who really tries their best and then who's like okay with getting a C.
Which one are you?
Well, I think I have a pretty good GPA,
Yeah.
or at least I try. Yeah, but
When you say never enough, I find it funny because when I was at high school in the
mhm,
UK and going to university, I was always like kind of B plus, and I was totally fine with that.
mhm,
That was consistent throughout all of it, and I was always getting those
right,
scores, and I felt totally comfortable because I knew some people were smarter than me, and they would
mhm,
be at the top, and I was like, yeah, and this is my level,
mhm,
and I was completely happy with that. I didn't feel
mhm,
the need to. I kind of accepted it, not like as
mhm,
being negative, but like, well, we're all different. We all have different
right,
abilities, and I was kind of fine with mine. But I guess if we're getting on to sort of identity and culture, you were one of the first people to teach me the term TCK, right?
yeah,
And I was like, oh wow, that's a new word. I didn't know that. I thought it was some kind of, I don't know. It sounds like a TCK. It sounds like it could be a K-pop band. It could be a car. How do you describe TCK? What's your take on it?
I would say TCKs are people who have lived outside their parents' culture during their adolescence. So mainly age 8 to maybe 17, 18, when their identities are still forming. And I heard most of the TCKs usually plan on coming back to their parents' country, even though that's not always the case, but I think that's how I describe them.
Okay, and so you're a TCK, right? That you would describe yourself as a TCK. Do you see yourself as 100% Korean or something else? Forgive if these questions are insensitive, but I'm curious. That's why I'm asking you. Like, you're 100% Korean, or you're mixed, or you're half, or how does that work?
I'm 100% Korean nationally. Like, my nationality is Korean.
Yeah.
But I used to distance myself from being a Korean. So when we would talk about Koreans, it would be kind of like a not me but them kind of situation. And I didn't know I was doing this until very recently. I was like, wow, we really categorize ourselves as like non-Koreans, even though we are Koreans. But at heart, I think we would never really be one nationality. Yeah.
I've caught myself saying like we and us when I'm talking about Korea. Like, I've been here so long that slips into mind. But
that's cool.
I've known you for a while, and I think even just visually you seem to look a little bit different from Koreans. You're 100% Korean. Were you aware you were doing that? Was that a conscious thing? Was it subconscious? Do you disagree with what I was seeing, or?
Well, I think it's half because I've always tried to, like, the way I dress or the way I kind of show myself, I would try to look different, like distinguished. But then that also came naturally because I was in a culture where being the same wasn't really something that people sought after. So I guess that came naturally, but also like consciously. Yeah.
Did you ever get much sort of did you enjoy standing out? Did you get any alienation? Because a lot of people take pride in that, like, I'm different from everyone else, but some people that makes them feel anxious or something. What was that like?
I loved being different. I think that was one of the things that I was very proud of, that I wasn't like anybody and that I was always trying to be myself, like I wasn't doing that just to stand out. It was because I genuinely, for example, wear like the clothes that I'm wearing, or like the makeup I'm doing, or like my tan skin, or I don't know, like I would stand out, but it was something that I loved. So yeah, it wasn't uncomfortable.
What were your friends like? Were they like, wow, Chan, you're so cool, like you're being yourself? Or were they like, hey, you should be more like other people? What was the people around you? How did they react to the tan skin and the weird clothes?
Oh man, I got so many comments on my tan skin. Yeah, there were girls that were telling me, oh my gosh, you've gotten darker than last time. Like for me, that was a great thing, right? I'm like, damn, like I'm tan now. But for others, it was like, it was very like frowned upon. And whenever I wear like these cool jackets, or I wear like these patterned paddings, and I have like orange bags, and at first they're like, oh my gosh, that's really cool, right? And then I think they've learned to accept that that's kind of who I am, which but they didn't try to change me or anything like that. They encouraged, I guess, my uniqueness. So
that's good. Is skin color a thing? I mean, like in terms of tone, or in terms of whitening, or using BB cream, or dark, is it like a topic of conversation? Do you feel it when you buy cosmetics? It's weird for me because I'm just kind of like pink and red all the time, but I deal with it, But is it a conscious thing? Is it a big thing as a young Korean, the color of your skin?
I hadn't noticed, but I think so, because when I went to like Olive Young to get concealer,
Mm.
there wasn't any that matched my color. And I wasn't even like brown girls, right? I was
Hmm.
just like normal tan skin.
Right.
But I couldn't believe that there wasn't a color for me.
So what did you do?
And so I started like mixing the colors, or I just didn't use them at all. I
Mm.
found like cosmetic brands that were from abroad that usually had more range of colors.
Mm.
That helped. But yeah, I think it is a pretty big topic, even though people don't really talk about it.
Right. Is one thing I noticed, like doing lot of K-pop study and Hallyu study, is that if you go back, it might just be fashion trends as well, but if you go back like to the early 2000s and you see like early Ihuri performances and things like that, the performers are really dark skinned. They're kind of like tanned. Maybe that was the fashion. And then you fast forward 15 years and everyone's just like gloss white.
Yeah.
And
Oh yeah.
maybe it's just a trend, I guess.
Maybe. I don't know.
When you say like TCK, so do you think it's different being a TCK in Korea than being a TCK in France or in Canada? Because I guess TCK is a global thing, right? It's not specific to Korea.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, it's very different.
Right. How?
And
Like, what's the Korean TCK thing like then?
basically, I don't know if it's just Seoul Women's University because I haven't really seen any TCKs here.
Mm.
But I am considered a 외국인.
Really?
So yeah, my
Wow.
friends used to call me 외국인, like
Yeah.
as a joke,
Yeah.
like she's a Korean, but she's a 외국인. But then like
Sometimes people say to me, David is a Wegokin, but he's a Korean. So we've got it flipped, us two. Yeah.
yeah, and I guess in like other countries, it's just such a normal thing. It's not really something that stands out, but in
Mm.
Korea, everyone's like, "Oh, you're 외국인. Oh, that's why you're different." Like that always kind of becomes a reason why you're different, like why you do the things you do. It's
Mm.
because you're a TCK. But that was never really a problem outside of Korea.
Hmm.
But that was just kind of like the treatment that I got.
What do you think they mean when they say, you're Wegokin? Because you're not, what are they implying there? Like, because that's not just physical, I think. They're talking about
Mm,
something not physical, right? It's not just skin
mm.
color there, it's something else. What do they mean?
Oh, it's like one example would be doing like air quotes.
Yeah.
When I would talk about something, I use air quotes a lot, but
Mm.
then I did that in Korean words as well
Hmm.
because I thought that was like a thing. And they're like, "Oh, that's such a 외국인 thing to do." Like, dude, like, and they would say, "Oh, that's so hip,"
Yeah.
like, she knows English and stuff. And I don't know. I I'm just so embarrassed at that point, but I've learned to embrace it, I guess.
Were there any, like, have you had to become a little bit more Korean? Have there been parts where you're like,
Mm,
I've got to try to be a bit more Korean here. I've got to adapt it. Like, I'll get it with
mm,
I'm used to standing with my shoulders square and looking people in the eye when I talk to them. That's what I was
mhm,
raised to do. But in Korea, if it's your 사장님, something like that, you got to be small, you got to look down. And
mm,
I'm fighting an urge there to be
mm,
respectful and look at people. But I've found myself doing that. Have you,
mm.
have you like adopted some Korean traits?
Is talking less a
Mm.
Korean trait? I guess
Yeah.
because when I was in like my first year, I think I questioned a lot, like the things my professors were saying and like what the school was saying. I would like raise my hand. I'll be like, like we pay this much to get into art school. How come they don't support us like Adobe programs? Like I would ask that
Yeah.
because I was genuinely curious and I was genuinely mad. But like they all looked at me and they were like, what the hell is she saying?
Mm.
Like, and then so I guess I kind of got that sense of like when to speak up or and when to when not to,
Hmm.
in the within the Korean culture. Yeah, that's one thing.
That's absolutely true. There's always like it's somebody's turn to speak, and you have to use your nunchi or something to
Yeah,
find out, right?
yeah.
It's,
It's exhausting. Yeah.
yeah. Do you think that having that, like being that Wegukin, and I'm doing air quotes by the way now when I say that, you can't see it, but I am, trust me. Do you think that having that foreign experience, does that give you a better or a different view of Korea? Because like if you live, no matter where you live in France or you live in Argentina all your life, it's kind of hard to see that culture because you're just living in it and everything's normal and natural. Do you think that experience of living outside for a while and coming back to Korea and seeing it, does it give you a different view? Does it give you a clearer view of Korean culture and what's going on?
Yeah, for sure. I think because I've lived in the Philippines for like 11 years,
Mm,
and I have something to compare it to,
hmm.
like because Philippine was like this, and then the school I went to was like an international school, so it was like a mix of cultures, but still it was more in the Western side.
Hmm.
So then, like seeing that culture and then coming back to Korea, like things are more um, clear. It's more evident, I guess. Like,
Mm. How
yeah.
do Korean people react when you tell them that you spent time in the Philippines? Because not like all
Uh,
Wayguk's different, right? So if a taxi driver hears that I'm from England or something, oh, she's a gentleman, very, very, which is the complete opposite of me. But there are these
yeah.
inbuilt preconceptions. They don't
Mm,
come from an evil
yeah.
place. I don't think it's just society and culture. What's
Mm-hmm.
what's the view you find when you tell people that you spent a lot of time in the Philippines? What's their
Mm.
Do they demonstrate any understanding or knowledge of it, or
Well, the first thing that comes up is, have you been to Boracay?
have you?
I, no,
No, you haven't.
the thing. I haven't been to like the famous places.
Right.
They're like, oh, Boracay was so nice. They had really good food and stuff. I guess they try to talk about the positive things.
Yeah.
Um, but most of the things they talk about are, not like a day-to-day thing.
Mm.
So honestly, it's hard to relate, but I give them points for trying to
Hmm.
connect with me. So that's that. But I think there definitely is a view that because it's like a southeastern country,
Mm.
it's not like Korea.
All this kind of Hallyu stuff at the moment is very real. I know you've studied a bit of it, but the Squid
Hmm.
Games and the does that make it easier to be a Korean? Does that make it cooler to be a Korean? Does that
Mm.
make like yeah, okay, this is part of me. It's just like you have I don't know, a more cynical view towards it. How does that affect the identity?
Mm. I think so. I definitely think so. I think I don't know, like back in high school,
Mm.
being a Korean wasn't really a cool thing. It was
Hmm.
like, oh, they're Koreans. Oh, they're doing the Korean stuff. And I think that's one of the reasons why I tried so hard not to do the things that Koreans did or just like the cliches. I try to avoid all those in
Mm.
order to get out of that title of being a Korean.
Mm.
But I think now the treatment is so much better. And if I went back to high school, I think being a Korean would be a much cooler thing.
Hmm.
So I think in that sense, it has changed.
No. I don't think I've ever seen you in a long padding, so it might make sense that you avoid all
Yeah.
those kind of cliche things, right?
Yeah. And
Do you think that, like, with these multicultural or TCK experiences, does it give you a desire then to go somewhere else, like looking forward, or does Korea feel like your home, or you might go back to the Philippines or go somewhere else? Do you feel settled? Do you feel like this could be your forever place, or?
I think it's changed over time, but when I first came to Korea, it was like, no way, like I am getting out of here.
Hmm.
I even applied to colleges in the States and I got accepted, but I couldn't go there. So I was like, okay, as soon as I graduate, I'm getting out of here.
Hmm.
And then now it's like I'm about to graduate and stuff. I'm realizing maybe I need something more to get out of Korea because um, even just looking at the States, you
Hmm.
need like getting the visa is very hard.
Hmm.
And like why would they hire a foreigner if they have a similar candidate who's in the States and you don't have to help them with any like complicated visa and stuff, right?
Hmm.
So I was like, I really need something that could raise my like 몸값
Hmm.
basically.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, right now I'm like, okay, I think I can work for a few years. But at the back of my mind, we're like all thinking of leaving at one point.
Yeah.
Like it's a goal, I guess.
I always find it super interesting that so many, especially at Seoul Women's University, so many
Mm.
young women want to go to the States because,
Oh.
like, I help with all the recommendation letters and
Mm-hmm.
applications and I support them. But like, sometimes I look at the States and I'm like, the problems that they have there, not only just like with health
Mm.
insurance, with guns, and I'm like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
it feels like
Right.
a third world country with iPads or something
Mm-hmm.
like that. It's a bit weird,
Mm-hmm.
but I see so many people still, and that's where they want to go, and so I support them.
Mm-hmm.
But and you mentioned it yourself, and again,
Mm-hmm.
of course, I would support that. But is it
Yeah.
the States? That's the vision. Why do so many people have that desire to get to the States, and I don't know, not
Mm-hmm.
Belgium or New Zealand or all these other places?
Well, for me, it's not really the States. Like I just said the States
Mm,
as like a Western country, but I wanted to go. We all want to go to a place where we're treated equally, I
mm,
think,
mm,
and like US is just one of the examples. But for me, I wanted to go to like Australia,
mm,
and it's. I think people just want to get out because I don't know, like the treatment I guess people get from being in Korea,
mm.
it's like it's not worth it. Like it's like with your job or with your qualification, you feel like you can get a much better treatment outside of Korea.
Mm.
And yeah, I guess that's why.
Is that treatment because you're young? Treatment because you're a woman? Both? Or what kind of was that treatment? What's that frustration? What is it?
Just like as a human and the way they look
Mm,
at work. So like in Korea, like waitressing job is like, oh, it's so bad. Like
mm,
it's shit, like why are you working there? Like even like our not my parents, but like our parents' age, they all think, working at a cafe or working at a restaurant at this
mm,
age is like what it's like you're wasting your life, right?
mm,
But even if you go to like Australia or the States, like how much money they make from like waitressing and like,
mm,
just doing those jobs. So like the way they treat like life, I
mm.
guess, and the way they look at the quality of life and the standard for happiness and the standard for um like human life, I don't know,
Mm,
quality for human life is very
mm.
different. At least that's how I feel. So
I totally
yeah.
get that. I know what you mean. It's like because no matter what job you're doing, if you're working in a service station or a garage or a 편의점,
Mm, mm,
you're still a human being. Like if
right.
you earn $200 a month, $2,000 a month, or 2 million bucks a
Mm-hmm.
month, you're still earning money. You're doing your thing, and
Mm-hmm.
everybody's kind of equal at the end of the day. But it doesn't feel
Yeah.
like that in Korea, does it? It feels like
Yeah, I know.
there's ranks and
Mm-hmm.
there's not yang bands anymore with their gats on, but
Mm.
you can still feel that. I think in
Oh
Korea.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
So if you want to go somewhere else, you said you're going to have to do like this spec up or get your qualifications up or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like, are you confident, like looking ahead at Korea when you get out of university? Like, do you look at it and go, I can do a lot of things here, or like, or the job market is terrible, or how do you feel when you look out at Korea after university? Does it fill you with
Uh,
hope, despair, or just?
I know I'm not gonna starve
Hmm.
because I I think everyone can get a job. It's just a matter of, is it a good company? Is it a job you want to do? But there's a place for everyone, I think. But I don't know. Everyone wants to go to this one place, right? And that one place is the place where they have all the good treatment, and that's really hard to get into. So I don't know. Like, I don't want to settle, but I also don't want to compete with those, I don't know, piranhas, because I don't know, it's just, is it worth it? And I don't know. So it's competitive, but
everybody always seems to be looking at what other people are doing. I think perhaps that's one of like your strengths. If you can just do what you're doing and be happy with doing what you're doing and not being worried too much about other people, not comparing, it makes life a bit easier to swim with those piranhas then.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So what you do is art and design, and I know you're having all different thoughts about that at the moment, actually, on Insta and things like. But
oh my gosh,
you are the brainchild behind the artwork for this podcast, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
Love it. What's it like being a young artist in South Korea, or a young designer? Like, what's that experience been like for you?
It's hard. I don't know. Man, I could talk about this forever, but I came to study like design and art because I thought there was no answer to design, or there was no answer to art, and that it was a way to kind of like do what I want, but at the same time learn how to make money, but as I learned this course, I learned that there are more rules and more restrictions and more limitations on like what you can do. And because this is like client based and it's like problem solving, right? I'm realizing these are all the stuff that I've tried to avoid, but yet here I am, like trying to do the things that I've hated in the first place. And I realized that is stronger in Korea, I guess. When I say stronger, the way like professors teach and the students engage is very different from like the West or the other countries. So then I feel like I'm kind of like trapped in this hole and of Korea. Like it's just like Korea style and Korea design, or like it's very limited.
What's the quality like? Because I know, for example, in math, like Korean students really get compared to international, other people, the math might be really high, but other subjects they might be behind. What do you think the level of design and art is like in Korea compared to other places around the world?
Koreans do this art exam when they come into college. So you have to draw like a certain thing for like 4 hours.
What do you draw? Like, is it a flower, a person? What do you draw?
No, they have like 3 different subjects. I forgot, but they give you like 2 objects, right? So for example, like a spoon and like a cup, and then you have to describe that in a way that's like active, but also very like imaginative and like, yeah. So like there are all these topics, and you learn to do that for 3 years during high school, and then they come in and take the test. So in that sense, they're very good at drawing. Like it's perfect. But then I think drawing is very different from design.
I don't know if this is a stereotype, or if I'm wrong on this, but you're in the field, so I'll ask you. And also Jay from Solid was mentioning this, but like the motor skills of art, like of drawing the pencil, and I see this amongst young family members and students. They can pick up something, and a lot of people can draw excellently, just like they can they can mimic something, they can copy something, just like they can play piano, they can play Paganini or Mozart. Then you ask them to write a song or just play anything, like, and they're like, but where's the music?
Mm.
Is there sort of creativity, imagination? Do you see any difference between the mechanical skill of reproducing something that already exists and then that kind of making something from nothing?
For sure. Like, especially during my first year, I was like, wow, these kids, these
These
kids
kids, you
really
say.
have zero imagination and like zero independence because, you know, like they've been given like assignments to do and like a specific format that they're supposed to follow.
Mm,
So they never really had the time to think about what they're drawing
mm,
or think about what they're expressing, right? So they come to college and they're like, oh, all of a sudden the professors want you to do your own thing, but they've never done that before. So they're like stuck. They're like,
mm.
oh, I really don't know what to do. Um, and so in that area, I guess, first year I was like, man, you know, easy. I can, man, I'm good, which was so arrogant back then. But yeah, that's what I thought. But now I think, you know,
Was that natural because it was you, or because you'd spent time in a different education environment?
I
Mixture of.
think, yeah, a mixture of both. I think,
Mm,
yeah, I guess I saw things differently. I don't know if that's a I'm not saying I saw things differently, but you know,
mm.
like the way I looked at the people and the thing I was doing was kind of different, I think.
Which I think just shows that it's not anything innate or genetic. It's just culture in the
Hmm.
environment, and if you
Right,
put people in
right.
different places, they'll respond differently.
Hmm.
What's trendy in at the moment? Like when you're doing art and design and you're around all these other artists, is it modern? Is it cuboid? Is it retro? I don't know the correct words here, Chan. What's
Oh,
trendy in Korean art and design at the moment, apart from obviously my podcast front cover?
trendy.
I mean, are there any sort of techniques or schemes that seem to be everyone's looking at?
Well, a lot of, well, currently, like Hangul is a huge thing, I think,
Hmm.
because back then, like the Korean letters didn't get a lot of attention,
Yeah.
and it wasn't something that people wanted to put in their design or wanted to use.
Mm.
But these days, a lot of the design is incorporating Hangul into their design, kind of like showing their identity as a Korean, um, and kind of strengthening that, I think.
We should do a Hangul version of Korea Deconstructed label.
Oh,
That would be.
that's a pretty good idea. Yeah.
Is there anything? Is when you look at the Korean language, does it sing to you artistically? Do you think, yeah, that can be used, or it's just we can't really use?
Mm,
When how about you, sort of approaching that from a design or artistic way? Have you found any joy with it?
yeah, our school is actually very famous for Korean typography, like Hangul design.
Hmm.
Um, so I took that class. Before then, I was like, oh, I don't know. It just looks too complicated, you know. It
Mm.
doesn't look aesthetically good,
Hmm.
if you know what I mean. But
Yeah.
now I'm seeing the beauty of it. Like I'm seeing the science behind it, and I'm
Hmm.
seeing how it's created, and the story behind it is very like touching, I guess, the way it's been created and stuff. So I think that speaks to a lot of people and to me as well. So I like it. I like hunger.
Did you have any? Yeah, absolutely. Did you have any learning the language? Because if you were in international school in the Philippines for those years, and I just heard you give it the old Hangul designer, like how was it
Yeah.
like learning the Korean tongue? Was that the language itself? Did you get on with that well?
uh,
Or
it's still so hard, you know.
I know, yeah.
It's so hard, but yeah, I think I'm getting the hang of it. I really try to focus like on like the 맞춤법,
Hmm.
like the grammar
Hmm.
and like the 띄어쓰기 and stuff. And there's this this is a really sad story, but when I was in my first year, man, first year was rough.
Mm. First
I
year of
took this,
university, you mean?
yeah, first
Yeah.
year of university. I had my very first midterm for this one class. Um, when I was learning the courses, it was so fun, right? The things I was learning is so fascinating. And I was like studying for the test, and then I got all the concept and I was like ready to take the test. And I walk in there and I sit down. I was like, I don't know what that's saying. The questions? I was like, Professor, these questions were never kind of like a part of the lessons we learned, but
Yeah.
I like froze. And I was like, Achan, like you need to do this. And so and I started writing down the answers and I was like, you know what? That's right. That's a right answer, right? And that sounds really good. And I turned it in and I got a D plus in both my midterm and
Whoa.
my final. And I remember crying and calling my parents. I was like, you know, I got all the questions right, but I don't know Korean. So so it probably sounded so bad when I wrote it like on the essay.
Yeah.
And I got yeah, and then I just stopped trying. I told myself I'm never gonna take another like Korean class.
Okay.
And I did avoid it for a year, I think, a year or two. And I was like, you know, I'm really not in here for the grades. I'm here to learn about different topics and stuff. So then, you know, I started taking other courses, but it was hard. Like I didn't get it. I just didn't, you know.
Was there any like technically, because so many people try to learn Korean, and I'm actually next week I'm going to talk to the talk to me in Korean people. They like have these huge books that they help people learn Korean with.
Oh.
Yeah. So like, did you have anything that worked, or any way that you tried to learn Korean? I know that sounds weird saying that to a Korean person, Chan, but like
One thing I tried to do was if I didn't know a word, I would write it down and find the vocabulary, like the definition on the spot. Like you're learning English, you know, if you don't know a word, you find it. And then whenever I wrote something, I always went to the spell check, grammar check site online and always had it checked to see, you know, if anything was wrong. And I think that's mostly where I learned to, you know, do better in Korean.
that's a really cool thing to do, because I will use Korean words for like 4 or 5 years, and then I'll finally see it written down, or I'll be reading and I'll go, oh, that's that word. It's spelt completely differently from the way that I thought it was, or I've been saying it. It's eye-opening. So yeah, that checking, I think, is really important. Do you think, I don't know about this one, but do you think you change when you're in English and then you go to Korean? Is there a difference between like Chan and Kim Tan-mi? Does knowing, because I've often thought that the more Korean you know, the kind of more uncomfortable the country seems sometimes, because you can just walk around blissfully ignorant of a lot of stuff if you don't speak Korean. But do you think learning Korean and really adapting it does it produce a different person?
I think I'm very different when I'm around like my TCK friends. I don't know if this is an answer to your question, but yeah, I'm very different when I'm around like my TCK friends, or when I play touch rugby here in Korea. There's a lot of like foreigners that come, and yeah, you know, having conversations with them is very different from talking with my friends in college, or the Koreans that attend touch rugby. Like I try to have more rules and restrictions for myself when I talk to Koreans. I'm more careful.
I want to talk about touch rugby in a minute, because I find it fascinating that you do that for a variety of reasons. But when you talk about TCKs, and I've noticed more and more of these students, perhaps since I was made aware of it from you, but when you see other students that are TCKs, can you like spot them? Can you like get them and you go up to them and like, oh, are you a TCK too? Can you see them from a distance? Do you have a TCK community, or is it, how does that work?
There's a vibe. There's
Sure.
You just know. Like, well, if they start speaking, you know. Like your interviewee last week.
Yep.
She was like a Filipina, right? She was born in the Philippines. or something.
Yeah, she's a politician as well now,
Oh
isn't she? He has been. Yeah. Yeah.
no, I heard her accent, like the first
Uh-huh.
sentence, and I was like, oh, she's from the Philippines, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's that kind of thing. There's an aura, I guess, in the way, I don't know, their body posture.
So I guess language, yeah, but what's that body posture? What's that vibe? You can't describe vibes, but give it a
Ah,
shot. What's the TCK vibe?
yeah,
How can we spot it,
man.
Chan?
Um, Korean TCKs are very hard to spot
Mm,
for some reason, but like um other TCKs, like when you talk, um, there's like a lot of like, oh, I understand you kind of face, and then their body language is more like open, I
hmm.
guess. It's more open to the person they're talking to or when they're walking, I guess. Yeah, I it's hard to explain.
Is there any like actual community building? Like, for example, if it was,
Mm,
I don't know, the LGBT community, they would have symbols
mm,
and they would
mm,
have online like
mhm,
forums and katok bangs
mm,
and things like that.
mm.
Is it organized in any way, or is it just you bump into people?
In Korea, I'm pretty sure, but there's like an organization around the world for TCKs. Like
Okay.
they do camps, they do talks, they have like different pages.
Mm,
But in Korea, I know because I'm a missionary kid, they have a lot of like missionary kid gatherings.
hmm.
Who are TCKs?
What's a missionary kid in your view? Because I guess it some people might misinterpret that.
Uh, Missionary kids like um, parents who who go to other countries to evangelize,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
and the kids of those missionaries we call missionary kids.
Mm.
Mm, yeah.
So this TCK thing in Korea, there's like, is there an organizer? Are you going to start one? Are you going to be the president of
No,
the Chan
I'm.
TCK is?
I told you, I'm almost done with college. I'm like getting myself out of this whole thing. Yeah.
Mm. And then you're going to go and play touch rugby.
That's a great TCK community, by the way. If any TCK wants to join.
Okay. Why TCKs and why touch rugby? Why do those two things go together? I love it. I mean, I'm from England. I
Mm,
played rugby all my life, and
hmm.
what is it
You
about
should
those
come
two
play.
things coming together? Touch rugby. It's like drinking non-alcoholic beer, Chan. That doesn't work.
What? You know, there's a lot of rugby players that come and play,
Yeah,
and they like fumble and stuff. It's so funny.
I'm sure you would laugh if I fumbled. Yeah, but what is it with TCKs and touch rugby? Why do those go together?
Um, so basically, like touch rugby, we're like the only team in Korea, right? So, not a lot of Koreans know about it.
Mm,
Mainly, like, because touch is a sport that's famous outside of Korea. So people who want to bond that are just visiting Korea, they all come to play touch. And oh, I guess similarity between TCKs is
mm,
that they played a lot of sports during high school.
yeah.
So yeah, so I've actually met like our several students that were in our rival teams back in
Hmm.
high school.
Mm.
Yeah, and then we get a lot of like people from different countries, and I think that's why a lot of TCKs come, a lot of foreigners as well.
Where do you do it? Do you do it in Seoul? Do you have like a home ground or any? I'm not going to turn up and shout at you from the
Yeah.
touchline, but you do it in Seoul, I guess.
Hey, you're welcome to. We play in Jamon 한강공원
Hmm.
in
Hmm.
Seoul.
Okay.
Yeah. Today was the last session for this year. So,
It's getting cold, right?
yeah.
Years ago, like 15 years ago, playing rugby in South Korea, it was either on dirt pitches, like with stones, like dirt, and that's where we used to play
Hmm.
football and rugby, or even
Mm,
astroturf. And
hmm.
man, people's knees and everything would be
Oh
ripped.
yeah.
Do you you can play on proper grass now?
Uh, what do you mean?
What do you mean? I know it's weird in Korea, like grass, like the thing that grows, like green stuff on the ground. Because
Well,
when we started playing here, like football and rugby, it was just dirt. I mean, it was sand and
it's
mud and
still
stuff.
dirt.
Uh,
It's like cement. Everyone's like, I can't walk the next day because
yeah,
the impact. Yeah, we don't have a proper field.
That's nuts, isn't it? And it's exactly
Yeah,
what you were saying. And maybe if you
it's
grow up somewhere
crazy.
outside of Korea, you spend a
Mm,
lot of time doing sports. You spend a lot of
mm,
time not in school,
yeah.
just kicking off doing things, right?
Yeah.
And then if they, this is just a little rant, I'm sorry, but then if they do have grass in Korea, they'll put a sign around it saying you're not allowed to go on the grass. And you're like, what?
Yeah, but it was just so bizarre. And then they have like picnics in the grass. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I guess we'll kind of bring this to an end here, Chad. But it's been great, and I love the fashion and the TCKs. Any kind of final ideas or comments you want to run before we call it a night?
Um, I hope TCKs are proud of who they are because I
Mm.
guess in Korea, you kind of hide it when you first come to Korea, or you try not to stand out. But you know, if they get to know you,
Mm.
they'll love you. So I guess embracing being a TCK is really important.
That's a beautiful thing to say, and now that makes me want to ask you another question. So you're not off the hook just yet. Like so, I think you know me a little bit well, and I don't have any sort of
Mhm.
ill intention towards it. Is there any things that people sometimes get wrong towards TCKs, whether it might be like saying the
Mhm.
wrong thing? And
Oh,
I just mean like for myself or people in general. So is there
yeah.
anything that people kind of get wrong, or that we could do better, or we could, understand better? How
Mm.
does it get better going forward?
I think in the past, like they used to have this perception that TCKs come to college so easily.
Mm,
Like they don't have to take Sunan. Most of them have like the 3 year or the 12-year privilege. And so then even like people who don't study as much in high school easily get into 고려대,
mm.
um, 연세대,
What's
Sky,
that? What's that privilege thing you just mentioned? So I didn't.
It's like so if you've studied abroad from elementary, like first grade to 12th grade,
Mm,
they have this exception for you where you can just apply to basically any college, and there's no limit to how many people they can pick.
mm,
So you just basically, it's like a free, I don't want to say free pass because I know a lot of people really, really try hard, and it's
right.
like it's not just given to them, but it's easier for them to get in that way.
Okay.
So that used to be like a thing. Oh, she's a 재외국민. It's a
Mm,
재외국민 전형.
mm,
But yeah, that used to be a thing. So I personally was very scared to talk about it. So I didn't talk about how I got in. So when like professors would talk about how hard your entrance art exam was, I was like, I didn't take the same art exam. I mean, I did take it, but it was a
mm.
different kind of art exam. Um, and I didn't get the 12-year privilege because I stayed abroad 11 years, so I got the 3-year privilege. But still, I think there still is that perception that it was like a easy pass.
Right. Were
But
you a bit
that's
bummed
not
by missing
true.
that? You missed that by 1 year. Was that like, ah?
Oh yeah, I was like, I yeah, and yeah, but
Okay. So it's not about. So there should be more attention to not just looking at TCKs of people that have breezed through a system or got a free pass into the
hmm.
university, but they will have tried. They will have had their own
Oh
obstacles, I
yeah,
guess, and their
oh
own
yeah,
struggles. Yeah.
hmm, yeah.
Is there any sort of language elements like of words or phrases? Because I know it's a big thing now. We have to be very careful with our language and saying the right thing.
Mm.
Are there any of those in English or Korean that should be done better or?
I guess like just not alienating us
Mm,
from like being a Korean because we're not accepted like everywhere. Like we're not Koreans, but we're also not like Filipinas
mm,
or anything. So like I said, like calling us 외국인 isn't really helpful.
right.
Like and like asking us to speak English isn't really not pretty.
Hmm.
Don't do that. Please don't do that. Please don't clap when you speak English. Like please don't. Yeah.
Okay, so we're not going to ask you to perform tricks and speak English and do these other things.
Yeah.
I think that will help. Are you positive about the future for this, though? I mean, you seem to have positive vibes most of the time. Do you feel like this? I've seen you around midterms and finals and that before. Do you? But yeah, do you look on this positively? You think it's going to get better? Of course, there'll be some struggles, but
yeah, I think it's already getting better from, I guess, like the tension from outside of Korea is, I think, helping. Like, I don't know, BTS doing their stuff, 오징어 game doing their stuff. I think it opens up to a lot of I don't know, like possibilities of change.
I will be supporting and cheering you however it goes, Chan.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for teaching me about TCKs and helping me understand, and and getting there. It's hard to teach old dogs new tricks, but we get there in the end.
No problem. I mean, I'm glad to have met you. I think one of the reasons I could have survived college was because I met you and your classes. So thank you.
Yeah, I like that. I sometimes do a double take when I see a message from you and you're like, "Hey, David," because I've used, if I get a message, 교수님 안녕하세요. 배인정 학생 2012년 등등등, right? They give the whole thing for their introduction, and when you're like, "Hey, David, cheers, mate. Like, what's going on? Thanks for the grapes."
I'm like, I think at this point I can say David's a friend, right? Or
it's real.
After college.
Like, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I call you Chan, you call me David. That's what it is. Yeah. No, but I like that. It's real.
Deconstructed.